So we are now going to look at finding the gradient of a straight line using 2 points, 2 coordinates, x and y. Alright, so we're going to be using the formula for the gradient, otherwise known as the slope. And the formula that we will be using is going to have to do with the ratio between the change in y and the change in x. And our formula is going to be m, being the gradient, it symbolizes the gradient, m equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. What on earth is y2, y1, x2, x1? Alright, so let me just show you over here. Remember we talked about this is a formula that we can use for finding the gradient when we have 2 coordinates. And you're going to have 2 coordinates that are always of the form x and y. Now, which one is x1, which one's x2? It doesn't really matter. What you want to do is you want to pick your pairs. So this could be team 1 and this could be team 2. If that's the case, that means that this is x1, y1, because they're of team 1, and we have x2 and y2. So it's just a matter really of you trying to put a name to them, put a label to them, so that it's easier for you to distinguish, because you don't want to mix their coordinates. Before we move forward, let me just change the color of our pen to blue. Okay, so in this next slide, we're going to look at how do we implement this formula. So example number 1, find the slope of the line that goes through 2, 3, meaning this is our x value and this is our y value, and 4, 6. This is our x and this is our y. Always x first, y second. Label each given value as x1, y1, x2, y2. Therefore, that means that your x1 is 2, y1 is 3, x2 is 4, y2 is 6. What it does help me do, I just do it either on the top or below. I just write it so that it makes my life easier when I just want to just substitute my points. Then what you want to do always, because remember, when you're going to have this test, you're not going to only be graded for the answer that you give at the end. You're going to grade it for the entire process. So your knowledge behind it, which includes formulas. So always write the formula. M equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, then you want to very carefully substitute. You go and look at your points. Y2, my y2 was 6. There we go, we have it there. Then minus 3 over 4 minus 2. Very carefully, you do your subtraction and you end up with 3 over 2. So your slope, otherwise known as your gradient, is 3 over 2, 3 halves. Okay, so the other reason why we want you to always write your formulas down is because there's a less chance that you will make an error. If you just start substituting points without even looking at your formula, there's a greater chance that you're going to substitute the wrong points. So just write it there, follow it, take the time. It's better to be sure. Okay, let's move on to our second example. Find the slope of the line that goes through minus 5, 6, and minus 2, and minus 6. Again, write it down. Learn this. M equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 equals to, then you substitute your points. When you're substituting, be very careful. Y2 was minus 6, so don't put 6. It's not a positive 6, it's minus 6. Minus 6. Okay, this was a plus 6, right? So minus and a plus would have become a minus, which is why it's there. Then going to x2 minus x1, you have minus 2 minus brackets minus 5, because minus becomes a plus. Okay, so we have minus 6, we're at the top now again, we have minus 6, minus 6. They're going in the same direction. 2 negatives going in the same direction on the number line. They're going to the left. So that's minus 12. And then we have minus 2 plus 5. So these two numbers are going in opposite directions. All right. So what you want to do, the trick that we have mentioned is, if you end up with two numbers that are going in different directions, meaning that one is positive and one is negative, what you want to do is, this is our trick, yeah? You subtract them. So instead of saying -2 plus 5 or -2, whatever could happen, just say 5 minus 2, because that's something you're very used to from primary school. And you know that 5 minus 2 is 3. So just write 3, and then you want to look at them very carefully. You want to look at the sign that accompanies them behind them, right? And you want to look at the sign of the biggest number. The biggest number is 5. So it becomes a +5, because the difference on the number line is going to be greater for the one number that is greater, that moves more steps than the other one. We're going to explain this in another video if you need me to explain this in a little bit more depth, if you're not quite sure what I mean. Okay, and then we end up with -12/3, and then you want to do your division. So 12 minus 3 is, 12 divided by 3, apologies, is 4. Okay, but then you're also going to have minus divided by a plus. A minus divided by a positive, so a negative divided by a positive is a negative. Okay, so -4. Be very, very careful with that. So your slope, your gradient, let me write that again. Your gradient is -4. Otherwise, for short, m equals to -4. All right, so this is our time. So you've had a little bit of a chance to get an understanding of our formula. So let's look at this a little bit further, and let's try and work at it together. So we're going to do the first example so you can watch at the same time, right? But moving forward, I want you to just pause what you're doing, pause the video rather, so you can have a chance to go over it on your own, and then press start so you can see how you want to work it out and get full points. All right, so it says this one: work out the gradient of the line joining this pair of points 2, 3, and 5, 7. First things first, we write x1, y1, x2, y2. You label them. You're always very, very careful to do so. Then immediately you write your formula. So m equals 2 y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, now let's substitute our points very, very carefully. Y2, it was 7, minus y1, it was 3, it was a +3. Remember, minus, plus, make a minus, which is why I haven't changed it. Then x2 is 5, minus x1 is 2. All right, so let's look at the top. 7 minus 3 is 4. 5 minus 2 is 3. So we have 4/3. Yep. So our gradient is going to be finally 4/3. It does help when you're working these out, and especially in an exam, when you want to make your answer a little bit more clear and easier for the examiner to mark. And I think a lot of examiners, a lot of teachers really, really appreciate you doing that. So if you want to just make your answer a little bit more clear, what you want to do, or if you want to, you can just put a cloud around it, or just say answer is so-and-so, for example. Okay, just try and keep your work as neat as possible. Now, for this video, because our space is limited, whereas you in an exam, you're going to have pages and pages, so you can write very neatly. So please do take advantage of the fact you will have more space on a piece of paper to do that. Okay, examiners really, really appreciate it, and also it helps you keep your train of thought much more coherent, so that you can go back when it's time for you to check your answer. Okay, so at this time, what I want you to do is I want you to pause this video and give it a chance if you like. If you don't feel comfortable yet, we can just go through it together, and then you'll have time for you to go through some questions on your own completely. Okay, so this one says, work out the gradient of the line joining this pair of points. First things first, remember x1, y1, x2, y2, and our formula, always write it down. M equals 2. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I hope that by the end of this video you're brainwashed and this is a formula that sticks to you. Okay, so now we want to substitute our points. y2 is 5 minus y1 is 7. There we go. x2 is 4 minus, and x1 is minus 2. I'm going to write minus 2, but look at this. Brackets. Okay? Let's look at the top. 5 minus 7. Two numbers going in the opposite direction. Okay, so 5 minus 7. My trick is I just do 7 minus 5, which is 2, and I keep the sign of the biggest number. The biggest number was 7, which is why I keep its sign. If you have a problem with positive and negative numbers, do let me know, and a separate video will be made to make this a little bit more clear. Then, underneath we have 4 minus minus 2. Minus outside the brackets changes whatever sign is inside. So, it's going to be 4 minus, and a minus. Minus changes whatever is inside. It was a minus, so it's going to become a plus. So, 4 plus 2. Okay. So minus 2 on the top, and 4 plus 2 is 6. All right, so we have minus 2 over 6. If you want to simplify this, which it is advised, so 2 over 6 is going to be 1/3. But it's a minus divided by a plus, a negative divided by a positive, which is going to make it a negative overall as a fraction. So our gradient, if you want to be clear again, our gradient is minus 1/3. Pause, go back if you want, watch it again. At this point, this is a very, very crucial point. When we finish these, it doesn't mean that you should automatically go on to the next one. Instead, try and understand it, read it on your own without the video playing. If you have trouble with it, rewind, watch it again, and then write the question on a clean piece of paper and attempt it on your own without looking. And then go back, see, did I do everything correctly? Was my train of thought logical? Was I concise? Was my work neat? If you have a problem, obviously you can always reach out, but yeah, if you did it correct, just move on. But it's very, very important to make sure that practically we did understand what was happening before we move on. Okay, now this one says, work out the gradient of the line joining this pair of points. What did we say? x1, y1. Whoopsies. There you go. x2, y2. Next thing is our formula. M equals to, are you brainwashed yet? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's substitute. Okay, y2 is minus 6. Then we have minus, our y1 is 4. x2 is 7. Minus, our x1 is minus 3. Brackets. Didn't forget. Let's look at the top. Minus 6 minus 4. Negatives going the same direction, therefore you add them and keep their common sign. So minus 10. And then we have 7 minus minus 3. What did we say about the minus outside the brackets? It changes the signs of whatever is inside. So it's going to become a, since it's negative inside, the minus outside will change it and it will become a positive. So 7 plus 3. Okay, so on the top we have a minus 10. At the bottom we have a plus 10. So a negative and a positive. All right, so minus 10 over 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. But we have a minus, so a negative divided by a positive, which is a negative, which is why we have minus 1. Make sure that you always say your answer very clearly somewhere. Therefore, this is sign, by the way, I don't know if you know this. This sign means therefore. Yeah. So instead of you writing that entire word, it means therefore, just those 3 dots that if you actually join them would make a triangle. So m equals to minus 1. Let's move on. By the way, you don't just move on it, you just watch the video again, read it on your own without my voice. Write on a clean piece of paper, attempt it. Go back, see were your answers correct, did you do everything as you should, especially with the details. The minuses, the pluses, all those things make such a huge difference. You have to be careful. Take your time. There's no one rushing you. And this is the point where we reach a diagnostic test. All right. I want to tell you something. I want to remind you rather of something if you haven't thought about that in quite some time. When we say diagnostic test or a test in general, the purpose of tests are exactly that, to diagnose what what you've achieved, what your areas of strength are, but what your areas of improvement are, meaning where should we focus more time for you to improve. Can you imagine if there's something that you're really good at, and I just keep, as a teacher or any teacher, we keep drilling that into, you already know it, you already mastered it, why waste time? Let's move on to something that you need a bit more help with so you can excel. Okay, so it's nothing really, a test is nothing, or should not be nothing to be scared of. It's there for you. It's there for you to see where you need to work, and also where you need to, if you need to, you can ask for help. You need to know specifically where you need help. So yeah, try and see it in a different light. Try see tests. I know tests can be very, very stressful, but perhaps if you think of something that can actually help you, reach your goals, because you'll know what you need to focus more, maybe you'll start to see it differently, and they will start to seem a bit more friendly than they used to. So let's start. How are we going to do this? This is the time you pause your video, you try it on your own before I give you the answer. Okay, so pause this video. But in the meantime, by the way, I'm going to just solve the entire thing so you can just have the whole solution. Pause it. You're not allowed to peek. Okay? All right. Okay, by this point, I'm hoping that you've checked your answer. Yep. Does it match this one? If not, try and go back and see. So see the solution, see what you might have done differently. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next one. Pause again the video, solve it on your own, and then come back. Do not cheat. Yeah. All right. Okay, by this time, I hope you've checked your answer. If it matches, if it doesn't, go back, right? Now, when we say don't cheat, at the end of the day, you really, if you do peek at the answers before giving it a fair chance, at the end of the day, you're cheating yourself, yeah? So the point of this video is to help you and help you learn how to work as well, and how to study, and how to understand certain concepts. So really just give yourself rather that chance. Okay, work out the gradient of the line joining this pair of points. Again, pause the video, write those points down, and attempt it. By the way, if you haven't, always write this down. I'm telling you, your examiners will appreciate it. And also, at the end of the day, there's a smaller chance of of you making an error if you are very precise. Okay, so give it a go. See, I made a mistake right there. Okay. Okay, I hope at this point you checked your answer and I hope it matches. If you see there's a scribble, why did that scribble happen? I want you to know that even teachers are prone to making mistakes. Why did that mistake happen? I wasn't focused. Okay, it only takes a split second. So can you imagine if it takes a split second for someone who has seen this a lot more than you? This tells you that it could definitely happen to you. And the reason why I keep insisting on you writing everything, writing the labels, is because if it does happen that you're distracted for a split second, whether it's because someone made a noise, or you sneezed, or you just daydreamed a little bit, you want to go back to your safety of having written things so explicitly that you can just go back at any moment, correct that mistake, and just write things down. It does happen. Mistakes do happen. And also, the other thing, at the end of this video, I will actually go back and check my answers to see if my answers were correct, because yes, again, teachers make mistakes. And also with you, at the end of each, when you've gone through all your questions in a test or an exam, if you have more time, use it. Go back, check your answers. You have to use that time. We all make mistakes. So just make that risk of a mistake smaller by just checking your work, okay? Right. Now, we've reached the end of the diagnostic. I hope you did well, okay? If you didn't do well, it's fine. Go back, work at it again, understand the first examples that we did, right? Then read these ones that we've done, and now that you have the answers, understand where you went wrong. Then have a clear page with just the questions and attempt it again, okay? Now, this brings us to the final segment of this video. What happens, right, when we are given a question that is phrased in such a way that we've never seen before? A lot of times we panic. I'm here to tell you there is no reason to panic. Now, if there's a question in a test or an exam that you haven't seen before, right, it's very unlikely that a teacher gave you a question that either you don't know enough to solve it, or that you haven't touched it at all in class, okay? And usually if they do make a mistake and they add, for example, an extra part of the syllabus that wasn't taught, they will come back and just take that question out and not count it in the test. But if they have given it to you, but you haven't seen it phrased that way exactly, it means that you need to use a little bit more critical thinking. But the first thing to do is not panic, okay? So let's just have a look at this. It says work at the gradient of the line joining this pair of points, 2D minus 5D, 6D, 3D, all right? And you're like, oh my God, what is this? There's a D in it? Well, I've never seen this before. Let me panic. I won't do anything. We haven't done this in class. I just quit. No, you don't quit. You go back to your basics, right? Calm your breathing, go back to your basics. What do you know? You know this. You know to label things, right? So x1, y1, x2, y2, right? They're looking for the gradient. You know this. You have this. You know your formula. Write it down. M equals 2. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's just start substituting. Take it one step at a time. Write the things you know. And then slowly start substituting and start putting things in and just taking it one step at a time. Don't think further ahead. That will stress you out. Just do it one step at a time. So y2 is 3, I'm just going to write it in lowercase, minus y1, so that's going to be minus 5d, and then x2 is 6d minus 2d. All right, let's look at the top. It's going to be 3d, and minus outside the brackets changes whatever is inside, so that's going to become a plus 5d. Then we have 6d minus 2d, that makes 4d. So on the top I have 3d plus 5d, so it's like 3 bananas plus 5 bananas. How many bananas do I have? That's going to be 8d over 4d, right? So if you've reached this point, and let me just write this here a bit more clearly. So 8d over 4d. Even if you look at this, and because you're too stressed you can't see it, just take it, even this, take it one step at a time. 8 over 4. 8 divided by 4 is, let me just ask them that. It's 2, right? And then you have d over d. D divided by d isn't, let me just say 2 divided by 2. If you had 2 divided by 2, for example, right? Any number, 5 divided by 5, 8 divided by 8, 10 divided by 10. Isn't that always 1, right? So you can just cross that out. It's going to be 1. D divided by d is going to be 1. And any number times 1 is that number that you had before. So you're left with 8 over 4 is 2. And that's your answer. Was it that scary? It wasn't. Just take it one step at a time. Therefore, you reach that final point and you say your gradient equals to 2. And that's it. And there you have it. It wasn't that scary. All right, let's move on. My word, what happens if you have a question like this? The line joining 2 minus 5 to 4a, okay, and has gradient minus 1. Work out the value of a. And you haven't seen a question like this before. Okay, again, take it one step at a time. Label things. x1, y1, x2, y2. The gradient is minus 1. What's that? That means that your gradient is minus 1. It is what it is. So what's our gradient? How do we label it? With an m. So m equals to minus 1. Then what's the next thing that we know? Then we know the formula. So m equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's start again one step at a time and substitute. I'm actually going to do this one vertically, okay? So y2 is, I'm going to write this in lowercase, so a minus a minus 5, and then we have 4 minus 2. It's going to be an a plus 5 over 2. Now, why have I been doing this vertically so long? It's because it turns out we actually do know the gradient, so you can just write it down. So minus 1, minus 1. M is minus 1. You know it. So what you're actually going to end up with, you're going to end up with an equation where there is one unknown, and your unknown is A. Okay? Now, for something like this, you need prior knowledge to a chapter that's a lot of times is phrased rearranging equations or solving for a specific subject. Depends on your book that you're using. So if you don't have a background on this, please do let me know, and I'll give you another video where it explains it a little bit more clearly. But if you've been a student of mine, or if you've seen this before, this should be easy enough for you to understand. You want to now solve and make A your subject. So there's this trick that we do. By the way, my godmother, who was my teacher, would kill me if she actually saw this video, because the equal sign has to be exactly in between that line of the fraction. She would be totally correct, but sometimes with technologies, it's not that easy to write things so precisely. But she would be right. Precision is key. All right, so then what we do is we want to cross multiply. I'm going to take you a little bit over here. I'm sorry if that causes any confusion. Okay. So minus 1 equals to, let's just do this here where we have more space, plus 5 over 2. Okay, oops, pen. All right, there you go, sorry about that. Okay, why did I write over 1? The reason why I wrote over 1 is because any number divided by 1 is still that number. And it's going to make my life so much easier when it comes to cross multiplying. So what you're going to have is you're going to have minus 1 times 2, so it's with its pair that it was connected, equals to 1 times brackets a plus 5. Now, the reality is because it's times by 1, you don't have to put the brackets, but I just want you to be always careful when there's a number, when you do happen to have a fraction. It could have been a fraction, didn't have to be 1. It could have been 1/2. So it would have been 2 times a plus 5, and the 2 would have been multiplied with the entire thing, which is why you'd have to put the brackets. So I just want to be absolutely sure that we don't make that mistake. So minus 1 times 2 is minus 2. And then when you want to expand your bracket, just a small reminder, give me 1 second. Okay, 1 times a is a, plus 1 times 5 is 5. But now we want to make a the subject, and when we want to make a the subject, it means we want it to be a positive. That's number 1, and we want it to be 1a. We don't want 2 a's. We want 1 positive a. Right now, it is on the positive side. It is a plus a, since there is no other sign behind it. So I'm going to write a, but I want to keep it on its own, which is why I'm going to kick this guy. I'm going to take it to the other side. But what happens when it goes to the other side, it changes its sign. So from plus 5, it becomes a minus 5. Minus 5, minus 2, I keep that as it was. Okay, so a minus 5, minus 2, both in the same direction. That means it's minus 7, right? So your a is minus 7. You can just write it, you can just flip it at that point. When you flip both sides at the same time, you don't have to change the signs. So a is minus 7, and there you have it. It wasn't so tragic, right? I know when you see something new, the first tendency it is to, let me put it this way, to freak out. Don't freak out. Just take it one step at a time. Write the things that you do, and slowly more things will reveal themselves, okay? So, I hope this was a good video. If you need any more help, do not hesitate. I am always here. All right. Have a great day.